Hi guys, it's Miss Halligan. I'm going to be reading a little bit of Wonder. You've already seen I posted about Yishin today, so I'm not going to read too much of this today, but I promise we'll come back to it. So, we are on this chapter, paging Mr. Tushman. I would have been more nervous about meeting Mr. Tushman if I had known I was also going to be meeting some kids from my new school. But I didn't know, so if anything, I was kind of giggly. I couldn't stop thinking about all the jokes Daddy had made about Mr. Tushman's name. So when me and Mom arrived at Beecher Prep a few weeks before the start of school, I saw Mr. Tushman standing there, waiting for us at the entrance, and I started giggling right away. He didn't look at all what I pictured, though. I guess I thought he would have a huge butt, but he didn't. In fact, he was a pretty normal guy, tall and thin, old but not really old. He seemed nice. He shook my mom's hand first. "Hi, Mr. Tushman. It's so nice to see you again," said Mom. "This is my son, August." Mr. Tushman looked right at me and smiled and nodded. He put his hand out for me to shake. "Hi, August," he said, totally normally. "It's a pleasure to meet you." "Hi," I mumbled, dropping my hand into his hand while I looked down at his feet. He was wearing red Adidas. "So," he said, kneeling down in front of me so I couldn't look at his sneakers, but had to look at his face. "Your mom and dad have told me a lot about you." "Like what have they told you?" I asked. "Sorry?" "Honey, you have to speak up," said Mom. "Like what?" I asked, trying not to mumble. I admit I had a bad habit of mumbling. "Well, that you like to read," said Mr. Tushman, "and that you're a great artist." He had blue eyes and with white eyelashes. "And you're into science, right?" "Uh-huh," I said, nodding. "We have a couple great science electives at Beecher," he said. "Maybe you'll take one of them." "Uh-huh," I said, though I had no idea what an elective was. "So are you ready to take a tour?" "You mean we're doing that now?" I said. "Did you think we were going to the movies?" he answered, smiled, and stood up. "You didn't tell me we were taking a tour," I said to Mom in my accusing voice. "Augie," she started to say. "It'll be fine, August," said Mr. Tushman, holding my hand out to me. "I promise." I think he wanted me to take his hand, but I took my mom's hand instead. He smiled and started walking toward the entrance. Mommy gave me a little hand squeeze, though I didn't know if it was an I love you squeeze or an I'm sorry squeeze. Probably a little bit of both. The only school I'd ever been inside of was Via's, because I went with Mom and Dad to watch Via's spring concerts and stuff like that. This school was very different. It was smaller, and it smelled like a hospital. Nice Mrs. Garcia. We followed Mr. Tushman down a few hallways. There weren't a lot of people around, and the few people who were there didn't seem to notice me at all, though that may be because they didn't see me. I sort of hid behind Mom as I walked. I know that sounds kind of babyish of me, but I wasn't feeling very brave right then. We ended up in a small room where the words "Office of the Middle School Director" on the door. Inside there was a desk with a nice-seeming lady behind it, sitting. "This is Mrs. Garcia," said Mr. Tushman, and the lady smiled at Mom and took off her glasses and got up out of her chair. My mother shook her hand and said, "Isabel Pullman, nice to meet you." "And this is August," Mr. Tushman said. Mom kind of stepped to the side a bit so I wouldn't move forward. Then that thing happened what I've seen a million times before. When I looked up at her, Mrs. Garcia's eyes dropped for a second. It was so fast that no one else would have noticed, since the rest of her face stayed exactly the same. She was smiling a really shiny smile. "Such a pleasure to meet you, August," she said, holding out her hand for me to shake. "Hi," I said quietly, giving her my hand, but I didn't want to look at her face, so I kept staring at her glasses, which hung from a chain around her neck. "Wow, what a firm grip," said Mrs. Garcia. Her hand was really warm. The kids the kids got a killer shake," Mr. Tushman agreed, and everyone laughed above my head. "You can call me Mrs. G," Mrs. Garcia said. I think she was talking to me, but I was looking at all the stuff on her desk now. "That's what everyone calls me, Mrs. G. I forgot my combination, Mrs. G. I need a late pass, Mrs. G. I want to change my elective, Mrs. G." "Mrs. G's actually the one that runs this place," said Mr. Tushman, which again made all the grown-ups laugh. I'm here every morning by 7:30, Mrs. Garcia continued. Still looking at me while I stared at her brown sandals with small purple flowers on the buckles. So if you ever need anything, August, I'm the one to ask. And you can ask me anything. Okay, I mumbled. Oh, look at that cute baby, Mom said, pointing at one of the photographs on Mrs. Garcia's bulletin board. Is he yours? No. Oh my goodness, said Mrs. Garcia, smiling a big smile now that was totally different from her shiny smile. You've just made my day. That is my grandson. What a cutie, said Mom, shaking her head. How old? In that picture, he was 5 months, I think. But he's big now, almost 8 years old. Wow, said Mom, nodding and smiling. Well, he is absolutely beautiful. Thank you, said Mrs. Garcia, nodding like she was about to say something else about her grandson. But then, all of a sudden, her smile got a little smaller. We're all going to take very good care of August, she said to Mom, and I saw her give my mom's hand a little squeeze. I looked at Mom's face and realized she was just as nervous as I was. I guess I liked Mrs. Garcia when she wasn't wearing her shiny smile. Next chapter, this is the last one I'm going to read. Jack, Will, Julian, and Charlotte. We followed Mr. Tushman to a small room across from Mrs. Garcia's desk. He was talking as he closed the door to his office and sat down behind his big desk, though I really wasn't paying attention to much of what he was saying. I was looking around at all the things on his desk. Cool stuff, like a globe that floated in the air and a Rubik's type cube made with little mirrors. I liked his office a lot. I liked that there were all those neat little drawings and paintings by students on the wall, framed, like they were important. Mom sat down in a chair in front of Mr. Tushman's desk, and even though there was another chair right next to hers, I decided to stand beside her. Why do you have your own room and Mrs. G doesn't? I said. You mean, why do I have an office? Asked Mr. Tushman. You said she runs the place, I asked. Oh, well, I was kind of kidding. Mrs. G is my assistant. Mr. Tushman is director of the middle school, Mom explained. Do they call you Mr. T? I asked, which made him smile. Do you know who Mr. T is? He answered. I pity the fool, he said in a funny tough voice, like he was imitating someone. I had no idea what he was talking about. Anyway, no, said Mr. Tushman, shaking his hand. No one calls me Mr. T, though I have a feeling they're calling me a lot of other names and things I don't know about. Let's face it, a name like mine is not so easy to live with, you know what I mean? Here, I have to totally admit I laughed, because I knew exactly what he meant. My mom and dad had a teacher called Miss Butt, I said. Augie, said Mom. But Mr. Tushman laughed. Now that's bad, said Mr. Tushman, shaking his head. I guess I shouldn't complain. Hey, so listen here, August. Here's what I thought we could do today. Is that a pumpkin? I said, pointing to a framed painting behind Mr. Tushman's desk. Augie, sweetie, don't interrupt, said Mom. You like it? Said Mr. Tushman, turning around looking at the painting. I do too, and I thought it was a pumpkin too. Until the student who gave it to me explained it's actually not a pumpkin. It is, are you ready for this? A portrait of me. Now, August, I ask you, do I really look that much like a pumpkin? No, I answered, though I was thinking yes. Something about the way his cheeks puffed out when he smiled made me think he looked just like a jack-o'-lantern. Just as I thought, it occurred to me how funny that was. Cheeks, Mr. Tushman. And I started laughing a little. I shook my head to cover my mouth with my hand. Mr. Tushman smiled like he could read my mind. I was about to say something else, but then all of a sudden I heard other voices outside the office. Kids' voices. I'm not exaggerating when I say this, but a little bit of my heart started beating like I just run the longest race in the world. The laughter I had inside just poured out of me. The thing is, when I was little, I never minded meeting new kids at school, because all I met were kids were really little too. What's cool about really little kids is that they don't say stuff to try to hurt your feelings, even though sometimes they say stuff to hurt your feelings. I'm going to stop there for today, guys, and we'll continue on Thursday. I love y'all, and I hope you guys have a great day. If you need anything, just holler. Bye.